This is Patrick Kennedy. I'm interviewing Mark Niederauer of EO2 Concepts. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for your time.
And we're going to be talking a bit about their revolutionary oxygen technology, also the origin story of the company, how it came about, the team, the technology, which if you're interested in medtech investing, I think you're going to find fascinating, and then the markets that they're scaling up to. So let's start with the origin story of the company. How did the company start?
So the company originally started with the founder who was with another company called KCI, Kinetic Concepts, Inc. They had the negative pressure wound system. He was a regional sales manager. And he came across this technology, something that was very similar, yet different, because the negative pressure wound therapy pulls suction on a wound, has a dressing, and basically a unit that has, the vacuum pump and a canister to collect the fluid. Well, this system could be entirely solid state, the system we have, but it has also a cannula that connects to a dressing, so it looks similar. But if you look at how it's applied, it's much simpler because we're actually doing a positive flow to a wound and basically having the dressing absorb everything. It's very simple to apply versus what the negative pressure is. It's very difficult to apply because you have to have a perfect seal. So he saw that as something very intriguing and started coming up with concepts for how to do it. And luckily, his wife knew my wife, and they got the two of us together, and we started talking about what he wanted to do. And I helped him direct him to file patents and help start the company. I started consulting around that same time frame with him until I joined the company.
Okay, so we were talking a little bit before the start of the video about hyperbaric chambers, and I was sharing that I'd had bunion surgery and I had terrible pain on my feet after the surgery, and I would go every day for about 30 days really to get through this. And you were mentioning that this is a way, instead of having to go somewhere and get a hyperbaric chamber and get in, you actually kind of bring the hyperbaric chamber to the wound. Is that an oversimplification, or is that fairly accurate?
It's fairly accurate. The main thing is that we don't have the high pressure.
Okay.
So if you look at, we're applying something directly to the wound, it's very low pressure. And in fact, we have in our device, and we have this patented, we can limit the maximum amount of pressure that it exerts on the wound to prevent what's called capillary collapse. So if you look at your skin, you ever press on it and then you get that little white spot that goes away, that's capillary collapse. So if you have a local area that, too much pressure, it'll cause that, and that stops any nutrient flow or blood flow into the wound. So we don't want to have that happen. Okay. But yes, so we're basically like hyperbaric oxygen, except hyperbarics you only do for 90 minutes a day. We're always on, and we treat 7 days a week until the wound's closed.
So this gentleman saw this, the application of this on a wide scale. And then you got together through your wives, which is the fascinating story. And then just tell us a little bit about your background. I know you have a PhD in biochemical engineering. You were a Fulbright scholar as well.
I'm a Fulbright scholar, did some environmental engineering work in Germany.
Okay.
And great. Also worked for Bayer Chemical, so Bayer in Germany as well, early on.
Great.
So yeah, I started off in my PhD work was in pharmaceuticals, doing genetic engineering. And I started off working for, my first full-time job was with Herx, which is a combination German-Canadian firm. And that's what brought me to Texas originally, because I'm originally from the north.
Okay.
And so I started doing pharmaceutical pilot development and scale up. And again, through my wife, she was doing a postdoc here at UT Health in San Antonio. And the professor she was working with had a startup called Osteobiologics, which was a startup doing bone and cartilage repair with implants, resorbable implants. So I talked with him and did an interview shortly thereafter, and then moved from Corpus Christi, where I was working before, up to San Antonio, and have been here in medical device space ever since.
Now, did you have an exit in your past? I think I remember in your bio, you part of a company that had an exit. you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So the company was Osteobiologics. That was what brought me to the San Antonio region, and my wife. Um, and we were both in that startup. It took a while to get that going, as it's a small startup, and changing medical practice is always difficult. So, when you look at medical device companies, you do have a startup range where you're trying to prove the technology, show that it's efficacious. And we were able to do that. We actually created and got CE marked, which is certified European, the first cartilage repair device in the world. And so, yes, that successfully exited at more than a 20x multiple. The company was bought out by Smith Nephew.
Great. I know you have a campaign on Start Engine, and investors always like to see a team that had exits in the past. The reasoning being, someone could do it in the past, put lightning in a bottle, they can probably do it again. So
Correct. I can say what we did also is when, with the exit of Smith Nephew, I stayed on as plant manager for a few years and started looking for this other technologies, and that's how I came across this technology. And when this was getting ready to start up, Smith Nephew decided to shut our plant down. So I brought the core team from Osteobiologics with me to this company.
Okay, and you've got quite a dream team as well. We don't have a lot of time to go through it on this short interview, but anyone can go to the campaign page and look at everyone's bios. They're very long, very accomplished bios, and then also their LinkedIn as well. So
Yeah.
we kind of touch base on this a little bit, but let's unpack the technology a little bit more. Just a preface to that, you were saying that the two big markets you're focusing on now are the chronic and now acute wound market, and then also the cosmetic industry market as well.
Correct. Yeah. So where we started off with, for example, if you look at the origins back to the negative pressure wound therapy and our founder, that was the core market was chronic wound space. So things like pressure ulcers, ulcers on your feet, like diabetic foot ulcers or legs, those comprise a very large market. And so that's where we focused our original research on, our case reports. And if you look at most of our established research right now, it's in that space. But as we were exploring that, we kept trying small pilots, or doctors would try it on different patients. And so we kept exploring different areas we go into. For example, we started off with that chronic space, which are those long-term ulcers. And then we started going into the surgical space. So that's acute thing. So acute means it happened very recently. Typically, it's right away, like a surgery or injury. And so we started treating those wounds and saw really good success and scar reduction. And one of the early things we saw also was pain reduction. So that kind of opened up our minds to what else we could do with the technology. And so as you imagine, the acute space, talking about surgical, that now transcends directly into the plastics and aesthetic space. So plastic surgeries, facelifts, tummy tucks, mommy makeovers, those type of things, breast reductions. And that's where we really started getting traction, was being able to not only show originally that we were able to help cases that were having some issues, but then once they saw that, the doctors saw that, and the patients, then we started transitioning to more of a preventative. You can actually get better results. So reduce the pain, reduce the scarring, and reduce the healing time in half or less by applying oxygen therapy directly to the skin.
It's fantastic. And just to make a note, with medtech, as I was mentioning before the call too, somewhat different than talking to someone who's doing a fintech startup, in that you're not that fintech don't help people, but you really are, like, on some primal fundamental level helping people. I'm just looking at the campaign page, and it mentions how often these kind of wounds affect people with diabetes, and can sometimes result in an amputation of a limb due to these chronic wounds. So this technology, obviously you're interested in making money, but on a very pragmatic, everyday level, helps people with these chronic conditions that are sometimes hard to manage, preventing amputations, preventing pain, and also making their treatment much more affordable and easy, because this is something they can do it. Is it something they can do at home, or do they need to go into a clinic to do it?
So typically, our technology does require a prescription. So you have to at least, early on get a prescription, which, the doctors will do. But as soon as it's applied, for example, if you look at our large placebo trial we did, out of those patients, 146 patients, only one patient could not do their own dressing changes. And that was because it was on the bottom of the foot and the person just couldn't do it. But yeah, it's easy to apply. So if you think about it, it's, for example, if you go to a Walgreens or a CVS and you buy, some of these more advanced dressings like a waterproof dressing, you can think of ours as that waterproof dressing plus oxygen being infused into it. So if you can apply dressing, you can apply our technology. It is very simple.
Okay.
And to your point about amputations, that was one of the early, really good success stories that we had. We'd been trying for a while to get into, because we're on the federal supply schedule, which covers veterans and Native Americans. And so we've been trying to get into some of the large Native American populations, which are primarily around Arizona. That's some of the largest ones.
Yep.
And we finally got in, and they challenged us with, they had 5 patients that were scheduled for amputations. And they said, well, let's see how it works on these patients before we even look at adopting it for everybody else. Lo and behold, keep in mind, they were scheduled. So this is weeks away. They saw enough difference within that time frame that they stopped. They didn't do the amputations, and we healed all 5 patients. Now, that center that we were dealing with, they were averaging anywhere from 13 to 17 amputations per year below the knee. For the next 18 months, they had 0. And since they've been using our technology now for about 7 years, they're averaging around 2 or less.
Wow. So this is on a Native American reservation. Is that accurate?
It's a treatment center that's not on the reservation, but it's where they go to get treated. Yes.
For Native American populations, and those populations have large issues, my understanding, with diabetes. So it sounds like it was almost, I don't know if you're going to say the standard, but it was not uncommon for it to have a below the knee amputation before your technology was instituted.
Correct. I mean, it's not, I wouldn't say it's common, but the fact that it does happen, and if amputations are not only very costly, but if you look at it from a quality of life, it's a severe restriction. As soon as you start losing ambulatory, and typically amputations are, start with the feet, because that's the farthest away from your heart. It's the highest pressure, things like that. So it's where most complications start in people. And so, yeah, it's a game changer for people. It's really a life-changing event.
That's fantastic. Let's segue a little bit to the markets and the market size as well. I interview a lot of startup founders, and I think with 2 industries, it's hard to understand how big the markets are sometimes, are med tech, and then agriculture too is a tremendous market. So just we're focusing on 2 markets for now, though there's probably applications for others. And the first is acute and chronic and acute wounds. Do you know approximately how big that market size is in the United States?
So in the US for wound care, it's about 14 billion right now. So it's probably a little bit higher than that. The report from 2021 showed it at 13.5, and it's growing at about 6% a year.
Okay. And I'm going to make the point too, you guys are not pre-revenue, right? You do have revenue.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. This last year, we did a little over 4 million in revenue, and we're expecting to more than double that this year. We've been able to approximately double our revenue in our primary markets, which we're adding to those primary markets year over year now for over 2 years.
Okay.
And that goes back to a decision. For example, earlier I mentioned that placebo study. When we started the company, let's go into reimbursement. In healthcare, we originally did not have a reimbursable code, so we worked with CMS to design a study. So that study we actually worked with CMS on designing for about half a year, conducted it, ran it, and then based on that, CMS made the entire topical oxygen class, not just us, but also other companies that are out there doing similar things, but not as good as we are, to be honest. Because of our, if you look at our patent portfolio and the technology benefits we have. So that decision was made in 2018. And so we started really looking at now, how can we tackle the market and go on full scale, trying to broaden access to the technology, give more people access. So really, you're going to see the growth patterns dates back to about 2019 is where we really started to grow, because until then, we were focused primarily on research and product development modifications.
Okay. Now, for lay people like myself, explain what CMS is.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you're correct. CMS is the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. And basically, if you look at the American healthcare system outside of the federal supply schedule, which is the veterans and Native Americans, all of the healthcare really hinges around what CMS will pay for. Because even if you look at the private healthcare companies like Aetna, United, et cetera, they make most of their decisions based on what CMS decides is what will be covered.
Okay. So it has this multiplier effect beyond. So you've got the federal government will reimburse a doctor or a clinic for your technology now, and then these private insurers will as well. It's got this rollover effect.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So you got chronic and acute wounds, and then even scaling up from that is the cosmetic surgery market, which in a way, I guess, is a type of acute wound when you come right down to it.
Correct. Yeah. So if you look at most things that go on in the aesthetics and cosmetics, they're doing things, like some minor surgical procedures where they're removing tissue or tightening tissue. There's also other procedures where, for example, they're doing what's called facial ablation, where they're, to make the skin look younger on the face, they actually remove the outer layers of the face. So it's basically a burn that they create, but it's a controlled burn to remove the outer tissue. So things like that, they're all acute. And we've found that we work extremely well in the acute space, even including, surprisingly for us, we originally weren't expecting it, but we see dramatic pain relief. For example, in that facial ablation, we see it typically within minutes to half an hour.
Okay. Okay. And that's even a larger market in the United States than wounds.
Correct. It's again, in 2021, it was estimated about 18.8 billion. So by now it's around $20 billion.
Okay. And how big did you say the first market was? About 14 billion?
About 14 billion.
Okay. So you're looking about a $34 billion market you're aiming to capture. And what would be the next steps to scale up? You're already, CMS is okayed you. How do you scale up a technology like this from 4 million to 40 million?
So what we're doing right now is we're working in, for example, if you look at Center for Medicare and Medicaid, the application we've done with CMS is for Medicare. And so that would be, in the regions nationwide. And again, it's payer discretion. So it means it's open to the payers. CMS has not yet said, here's what you're going to pay for the technology. We're working on that. Okay. But there are states where the technology is being paid for. And so in those states, that's where we are really focusing, and we are challenging and expanding into other states as well. And not only the United States, but also in Canada. We've been working in Canada for several years now, and we have 6 provinces that are reimbursing for the technology up there. And so we've recently hired Salesforce to really focus on that, because to get to those provinces paying for us, we were using primarily clinicians so that we would do trials, again, research, showing it works. And again, a lot of times if you're changing technology for doctors, nurses, the proof is in the pudding. They got to try it themselves. You can show them the research, everything else. That opens the door. And then really when they try it, that's when you get that aha moment. It's I've gotten that especially from some of the deepest skeptics. Those are, to me, the most gratifying, because you see somebody that just doesn't believe in it, because they've been taught for ages that topical oxygen as a class doesn't work. We're topically applied, even though we're continuous. Then you see, for example, they try on a patient and a week later they can see the changes, and they just are flabbergasted. They didn't think they would see anything. I
mean, I'm just thinking about, as a layperson, cosmetic procedure is a voluntary procedure. And then you have pain, So if you had to spend just even a little bit extra to get rid of the pain, it'd be worth it. So are you talking about cosmetic surgeons and all sorts of like clinics like you see in all the major, even minor towns now that do, you're saying like mommy makeovers? What would be some other procedures that this would apply to?
So some of the main ones are be facelift, the facial ablation I was mentioning, because that's actually a fairly large market. And then anything that has to do with cosmetics that people have, for example, they have tissue and fat removed from arms, from tummies. So those type of things. And then, for example, even if you look at other things that are not traditionally thought of as aesthetic or cosmetic, but it can be, depending on how you want to be seen. For example, we were talking earlier about bunionectomies. For a lot of people, it's a matter of having the bunionectomy is a matter of improving your quality of your walking and reducing the pain. But for some people, they want to have pretty looking feet. They want to go to the beach, things like that. So having scar reduction or no scarring or minimal scarring, it's a big deal.
Sure.
Surprisingly, even with that procedure, we've seen dramatic pain relief. So we're getting ready to start a study on, for example, we're getting ready to start studies on vascular occlusion, on the bunionectomies, on tummy tucks. So we've got quite a few things going on where we've already seen it work. So now we're doing studies to demonstrate that it works and show that to not only physicians and nurses, but also to the payers.
Fantastic. We've got just about a minute left. You've got a campaign live on Start Engine. We're going to include the link when we send this out. Why invest? Why invest in EO2 Concepts?
So why invest? One of the big reasons we actually opened up on Start Engine is because we're all angel investors right now. So I'm invested, virtually everybody in this company is invested in the company. We have corporate backers that are also, backing us as well. And we opened up with Start Engine to allow basically a broader range of investors, including non-accredited investors, to be able to invest in an opportunity like this. Because our corporate partners founder, Van G. Miller, he was a big believer in having everybody have equal access. And if you look at where we're going and the growth rates we have, we are going to be the next big thing that's going to disrupt not only in the chronic wound care space, but also the acute wound care space. And we're going to be something totally new in the aesthetics and cosmetic space. So yeah, we have a huge growth potential.
Fantastic. And also help a lot of people in the process too, from what I've read about the company.
That's one of the best things about working in the medical device space is not only are you're growing a company, but you're making a difference in people's lives, not only the patients, but also the doctors and nurses that treat those patients.
Great. We'll end that on that high note. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you very much.